my experience was quite often that if we see bugs, that's quite often bugs are coming from um, like system specific logic of a contract, right? So they basically design, so let's say state machine, and the code doesn't match the state machine, right? There's some maybe transactions they overlooked. But of course, there is this kind of we know EVM quite well as reviewers, right? Like developers might not be familiar with all the perks and like features of EVM, and quite often like they miss stuff because they don't expect certain behavior, right? Now we see it less and less, I would say, but there's one pattern like reentrancy. It's always reappears. Like this is people know about it, and it still reappears. But just because it's how hard it is as a problem and how hard it is to kind of see it.
Hello, I'm Derek. You are watching Blockswap Buzz, and I'm here with Anton from ChainSecurity. Anton, how are you?
Hey Derek, nice. Happy to be here. Yeah, looking forward to the interview. Like, what's he gonna do now?
Yeah, great. Um, so I guess to kind of get us started, could you explain a little bit about yourself? How did you get into security and why blockchain security specifically? Why not any other type of security? How'd you end up here?
Yeah, I mean, to start, maybe before saying about myself, I need to say about chain security because it's quite, let's say, history of chain security is connected to my one. So chain security used to be, and like it is a spin-off of ETH Zurich. It's a Swiss institute, technical institute, and basically founding main founding members like were at that time like doing a PhDs there, like Hubert. It's one of the I think he is a like founding engineer kind of the chain security. And I was at the time also doing my master's thesis at chain security. Oh, sorry, at ETH. And basically, that's how I met some other people who later introduced me to chain security. And I was basically first doing some kind of internship with chain security during my studies. And afterwards, I even did like a master thesis as part of like it's master thesis in industry, so to say, was also with chain security. And yeah, I stayed there basically. Yeah, my
Okay.
role in chain sec. Yeah, I think yeah. Should
Oh,
I
oh,
think you also asked like about the role, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, no, I guess I was curious.
Oh, okay,
It's super
sure.
interesting that it sounds like you've really been with chain security for kind of your whole career. Um, so how long have you been with them and you know, what is your role there?
I mean, I've been so since chain security itself from 2017. I was one of the first interns. So I guess around 2018, maybe I was really bad with that time. But I think that's sometimes there was this exactly kind of mixed mode when I was doing basically this research project for ETH, but it was kind of still like already benefiting chain security, right? It's a mix for such a spin-offs of
So you
companies.
keep saying ETH. What is that? Can you? Yeah.
Yeah, it's ETH Zurich University,
Mhm.
not Ethereum Zurich. Yeah, it's ETH is basically translated as like Federal Technical University of Zurich. Basically, it's one of the best European computer science universities, right? I think in computer science it used to be even number one, like 2 or 3 years ago when I was following the ranking. I don't know I should have what's the updated status now, but it's pretty. Computer science department is pretty strong in ETH. It is in ETH. Let me call it ETH, like a Swiss German manner. So it's uh, distinguished from the Ethereum. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, got it. So what are you doing with them now? What does your day look like? Um,
Mhm.
yeah, curious.
Uh, yeah, I mean, we pretty have like flat hierarchy. So like
Mhm.
almost all people are technical. We are like now 22, I think. And non-technical, like fully non-technical, it's only 3 people. The rest are mostly engineers, and as all engineers, we doing audits more or less. Like for me, it's a bit less so audits because I also like doing on the side things like tooling for ChainSecurity. We are now used to do a lot of tools like before, but this got a bit put aside, and now we are trying to catch up with whatever ideas we have and start doing tools again. And that's pretty much what I'm doing. I would say it's 50-50 with audits, right?
Okay, got it. So, um, I'm curious. There's a lot of different audit firms out there. Um, I'm curious how chain security kind of differentiates themselves and what it is that chain security brings. Maybe that others don't. But otherwise, what is it that you guys do particularly well that clients really like?
Mhm. Yeah, good question. I'm not on the sales things that much, so I don't know what's our sales pitch is. But what I know about like our team capabilities, right? Most of us coming from sort of like academic background, right? It's we usually hire people from traditional university computer science education, and we basically teach them how to uh, review the smart contracts, right? So we basically try to we try to hire already like people who know the blockchain security, but it's really competitive field, and it's also we found easier just to basically teach really good computer sciences that local universities give us to do the blockchain things, right? And as a result, like because like they have really strong computer background, people in our company dive really into this fundamental level of problems quite often, um, and like protocols that require mass or heavy kind of state transition systems, right? Uh, I think this is where we are quite better than others, I hope. uh, it's where we, I think, shine compared to others, right? Because I mean, I'm also, for example, sitting on so say like hiring pipeline and seeing people who come to us. I mean, a few years ago, it was mostly people with no blockchain experience. Now there is like if you have people coming to us, they are most likely already have some sort of code arena experience. They were already doing like bug bounties or just competitive audits, and like saying that difference between such kind of self-taught guys and our most of our coworkers is that like there is some computer science core knowledge that people often lack, and uh, they sort of know what's not good to do in smart contracts, right? Like it's a pattern
Mhm.
matching kind of, but fundamentally, they are often like don't know why is it so, right? It's just like, well, for example, like there's this check effects interactions pattern. I don't know if you're close to coding in smart contracts.
No,
Usually
I'm not.
people
I'm
say
not.
like,
Yeah, I'm not too
yeah,
technical, but I am curious. We have a lot of very technical listeners, so feel free. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, so if like you most people say that this pattern like function should follow this pattern, right? But quite often like people don't ask why it is so, and turns out like for some things you kind of cannot do check effect interactions pattern
Mhm.
like at all. Even with say reentrancy lock, if seen from like just check effects interaction pattern, it basically just the last thing you're doing in your reentrancy lock is updating the lock variable, right? Which
Right.
is violates checks effects interactions pattern, right? But there is like quite a lot of science involved. Why is it so? And it's not any contracts that can be safe if they have check interactions pattern, and uh, but it's still good let's say general heuristics that quite a lot of developers need to follow and avoid problems. But some contracts, like let's say routers, or like there's a special like one each router itself, so like they basically fully rely on reentrancy, and they cannot be coded in this pattern in mind, right? uh,
Okay.
so like fundamental knowledge of, like being able to find violation of a pattern and then find why it is actually so. I think this is uh, like difference between most of code reviewers out there and our team.
Okay, so you guys are particularly good. Like it sounds like you're not just saying that, you know, it's just blockchain focused. I mean, that's where you guys are, but it's not just people coming from the blockchain industry looking at blockchain code. You guys have a bit of a different perspective, bringing in just sort of computer engineers in general, to take a look at these codes.
Pretty much,
So
yes, yes. And
yeah, so okay, so I guess this kind of takes you had mentioned something about state transitioning, and so we did this audit together, I think it was way back in January,
yeah,
so quite some time ago. I know a lot of things have changed with what we're doing and maybe the way you'd look at things, but it was part of the state replication gateway, or just kind of gateway for short. Um, I guess, did you have any thoughts around it, as far as being a new infrastructure or as a way to kind of move assets around? What were your general thoughts?
yes, a good question. I mean, this state replication, is for listeners, and maybe just to also
Yeah.
explain, that's basically you intend like to uh, basically replicate state from one chain on other chain, right? And for that, like you rely on the special attestations, right? And every time we have such system, like such, let's say, multi-chain system, right? Like our usual concerns are like replay. That's if you replicated a certain state once, there should be some mechanics to stop you doing it again, right? Otherwise,
Right.
like should be. I mean, let's say it's not always. Like if you maybe don't want to broadcast a message, then like you can again broadcast it any amount of time. But in your case, it was the case, right?
Mhm.
Um, Also, like because it's intended to be used on different chains, right? Um, we need to really dive into like difference between chains and how they use and so on, right? Because it's so different now.
Right.
Like no L2s are different. Of course, there are people claim there is like this EVM equivalence, right, and EVM compatibility and so on, right? But um, even with now with push zero, technically optimism stopped to be EVM equivalent, right? It's technically EVM compatible at best because push zero is not yet on optimism, right? So with this all small details, they are critical for this multi-chain systems, right?
Yeah.
And our typical thing is, of course, check the business logics, check that your state transition system makes sense, and uh, usually you having this high-level specifications that specifies the state transition, right? And then code is basically implementation of the specification, right?
Hmm.
Specific implementation of your intention, and then we going like layer down like to the execution layer and seeing that the code you written is actually compatible with both chains, and there's not going to be any surprises, right? I guess this is kind of how usually addressing systems like yours. It's multi-chain systems. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. You're starting very high level and getting an understanding for it, and then slowly working your way down to the execution environments. Um, yeah, thanks for that. So I guess I know you get to see a lot of different code bases. You're working in security, you get to see stuff sort of all over the industry. Um, what gets you excited? Like, what do you think is going to be coming as like the next big thing? Because you get to see a lot of stuff before it even gets a chance to go to market. so I'm curious, like where you see the advantages, where you see some like really beneficial things coming in technology and making some big waves. Even if it's not now, it could be a few years down the line for it to really take off, and it could just be like a style or whatever it might be. But I'm curious where you think everything's headed.
Yeah, good question. Because I like looking a lot of code, but it's also quite often looking so deep, it's hard to see if certain things are going to be successful or not. So like skepticism is always there. Uh, like from recent trend that at least I don't know remote on clients, and that's maybe also so say the bear market was helping people to bring the code on chain back to original intentions of the blockchain, right?
Mhm.
Because I remember during the like bull runs, let's say like around 2 years, 3 years ago, there were a lot of projects that were implementing ideas that were like not feasible. Like, sounded maybe good on their pitches, but that's not where their blockchain was ideally for, right? Something like let's print parking tickets on the blockchain, right? Something like you need each driver needs to authorize and create a account, right? To then we're gonna have a parking lot uh, like as a blockchain system, right? This is not it's too complex system to be honest, but like now I see most of the a lot of projects are really uh, using the blockchain specific and blockchain like let's say things that you can find on a blockchain like the privacy and so on, this untrusted settlement layer, right? Things I'm excited about. They're not so complex, but they're using blockchain for the in a ways it's intended to be used, right? Not doing a super complex system that needs to contain a lot of logic on blockchain, right? But it's more or less blockchain as a settlement layer and a complex system that comes as a, let's say, off-chain backend, right?
Okay.
So,
So that's interesting. And I guess I kind of have a follow-up question here. You've mentioned a few times what the blockchain is intended, use for, and people in this bear market are coming in and getting back to the intention. I guess I'm curious where you think the intention should be in the blockchain. Like, what do you think is as the intended use? I know you had mentioned like, is it just a settlement layer, or is it things sort of on top? What does that look like for you?
for me, it's like basically the party that holds your money, so to say, is the one you need to fully trust to be
Mhm.
like reliable with it. And uh, I mean, in Switzerland, we also have the Credit Suisse case there, like we already know, like it's not so always good to trust everybody with all the money, right? And it's exactly blockchain is where instead of having this trust, right, that's quite often is violated in real world, we basically use uh, maths and signatures, so to say, right? And like, of course, there's a let's say all value has a sort of a social consensus, right? And blockchain is just basically a way to establish a social consensus and make a settlement and transactions not depending on other parties or banks, right? But more that we can use it directly consumer to consumer, so to say. Right?
That's super interesting. I haven't necessarily heard that description of a blockchain before, and I think that's super interesting. So are you working across multiple blockchains, or do you have a focus in particular ones?
Mm-hmm. We usually now, I think, mostly do the EVM
Mhm.
blockchain, so to say, compatible or EVM equivalent, which even easier a bit. So we did audits on like reviews on ZK Sync even, I think, for the recent ones, Optimism, of course, Polygon, and like other contracts, right?
Mhm.
We used to do in past more different chains, like Tezos, I think we even had some like 2018, 2019, right? It's also I think we did Zilica, like I'm like trying to remember which one I was involved in. But somehow they don't have that much, let's say, demand there, and uh, when the demand even shows, it's usually takes us quite long time to again update our knowledge to be up to date with all the updates chain head, right? So we like basically started doing that, and now I think we're mostly doing like EVM and EVM, Ethereum based projects and ecosystems. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So if you're doing a lot of stuff on EVM and Ethereum-based ecosystems, do you notice a lot of the same types of code come across where um, just sort of stuff getting repeated and forked and just kind of presented in a different way, or are you seeing a lot of new new things coming out?
Mhm. Yeah, it's maybe something unique to us is that quite often we are reviewing something new, and force of course come to us, but I just know some uh, other kind of uh, data from our competitors that say that yeah, they're reviewing like 10 forks of the same like balancer protocol, right? I mean, for us, we are happy to be not in a case like where we are reviewing forks and forks and forks. I mean, it still happens that we review forks, but it's not the same fork of the same protocol, right? Uh, Repetitiveness, like just from my experience, I have not had problems with it. I think like maybe even in the last 2 years, I was not reviewing something twice, so to say, right? It was mostly always unique piece of code. Maybe it was fork of some other protocol, but I was not familiar with it, so it was for me like a new protocol, right? But otherwise, I think maybe like ChainSecurity is happy to be in position that we are quite long in the game, and like most of our clients come from recommendation of other our clients, like basically this spreading the contagious about ChainSecurity, right? And uh, that's why we usually look at the new stuff. All right. Yeah.
So if you're looking at a bunch of new code, I'm guessing you're working with a few new people to crypto as well. So I'm curious if there's certain attack vectors or certain errors that you see repeated over and over again in code that if people just knew about it, they could save you a lot of time and save themselves some time and auditing. Um, that you just they're just maybe not even just common mistakes, but things that people wouldn't think of until they've gone through their first audit.
Mhm. Oh, that's a really tough question. I mean, it's like my experience was quite often that if we see bugs, that's quite often bugs are coming from um, like system specific logic of a contract, right? So they basically design so it's the state machine and the code doesn't match the state machine, right? There's some maybe transactions are overlooked. But of course, there is this kind of we know EVM quite well as reviewers, right? Like developers might not be familiar with all the perks and like features of EVM, and quite often uh, like they miss stuff because they don't expect certain behavior, right? Now we see it less and less, I would say, but there's one pattern like reentrancy. It's always reappears. Like this is people know about it, it still reappears. But just because it's how hard it is as a problem and how hard it is to kind of see it.
So
Like yeah,
developers take note. That is one thing you
yeah,
can do to save yourself time. Um,
yeah. I mean, there was even this read-only reentrancy, like the recent finding that's kind of one of our engineers discovered, like Canon, and yeah, we have a blog post about it. It's appeared in quite like many code bases, surprisingly, and like one of the most famous is like Curve, right? It was not the code we audited, but it's like they have basically this new kind of pattern when basically contract itself, it's safe, right? It's totally not affected by a reentrancy. The state transitions will do what they should do, like the value won't be lost by curve itself, but composability is broken. It basically reentrancy inside the curve's code makes it possible for external contracts to read wrong data from curve, right? And that's like you can drain everybody who tries to integrate with curve, kind of, right?
And we don't want that. So if somebody wanted to get into auditing, not even necessarily at ChainSecurity, but this is sort of a career path that they want, somebody out of college, how do you think in this climate, I know you were able to get an internship in college and that was amazing, but if somebody else wants to kind of follow that path, what kind of advice do you have for them, or how do you think that they could get started, and how can they prep and get everything that they need to together?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of this learning by doing motto, right? If you want to do audits, just start doing them, right? And if you just see some code arena competition ongoing, just try to allocate time, actually participate in it, understand the code, right? And even if you lose, if you don't find anything there, you understand the code, you understand the findings of other people after they published, right? And it will be like up-to-date knowledge for you to learn, right? Because honestly, like even if people come to interview to us, right, like to the position of auditors, problem of our field, like in crypto, and I don't know, it's both blessing and a problem, is that it's developing so fast, right? A lot of security practices, they are like deteriorating quickly, right? We used to have like solidity version 7 that still needed like safe mass everywhere, right? It's not longer a problem, right? Just built into the solidity, right? Then it's always hard to say what's like up to date thing. That if you're learning it, are you learning the current cutting edge knowledge of the people, right? I don't know. I think best is to do it by doing, learn by doing, and I would do it myself. When I'm doing, like you mentioned, internship, when I was doing, I had to I remember submit some transactions on a JavaScript, right? And there was, I think, not even Truffle. There was just like Web3 as a JavaScript library, and it had zero documentation, so you had to dig in everything yourself, like how to do it. So it was also.
Sounds like it's become a little bit easier than
it's
when you
easier.
started.
Like there's a lot of docs there. There's a Remix that's all super awesome to test something out, right? There's like Foundry, Chisel, Brownie, like many tools that help make our lives easier.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and chatting with me and answering all my questions. I'm curious if people want to find ChainSecurity, or maybe find you, if you're okay with that. Like, how can people do that?
Yeah, I mean, we are on Twitter, right? There's at chain_security, so for ChainSecurity. I'm myself, I don't know my Twitter handle, but actually I'm more reading than posting. Yeah, and also, of course, we have a website, and there's like context. Yeah, but I think my name and surname, it will be in video. I think I'm not matching, having too many collisions with other people on Twitter, so it should be kind of findable. Yes, and of course, like if I'm in a conferences, people reach out to me personally.
Great. Yeah, that sounds good. So we'll put all those links in the description so people can find them. And thanks again for joining us, Anton.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, it was fun.